So I am not joking when I say that I think Titans just won episode Heresy with this build. The gameplay you're watching is from the Expert Nether, and it was just me and my buddy in here, so only 2 of us. We cleared it in 22 minutes on expert difficulty, and I think that's pretty dang fast. The build has insane DPS with any weapon you use. I think the gameplay can speak for itself on how powerful you become, and this includes that crazy DPS on all 3 of your weapons. I say this because in a minute here you will see me just destroy Carl in that lost sector that you all know about with a primary auto rifle. Just wait for it. It really blew my mind when I was testing things. The build also has crazy survivability, and that's because we just stack a ton of damage reduction, and also thanks to how the barricade works now on the Titan, and the buffs it has received over the last few seasons, including another one this season. You also have great ability regen, plus these abilities hit extra hard, and will always have a barricade available to use, thanks to us being able to make a ton of ionic traces, and how our exotic plays into the build. Now going into this season, I honestly thought Titan would be the worst. We saw the brief preview of the new aspect about a week or 2 ago, and I didn't think much of it. But with the overall synergy that we can create if you set things up right, we'll just skyrocket the potential of this build through the roof. And I'm talking some crazy interactions. Even things like threadlings calling forth lightning for you, or even your barricade all on its own calling down lightning as well, pulse grenades dealing amazing damage and spamming ionic traces for you. It just keeps going on and on how we stack everything together. So there is so much to unpack here, and I hope you guys pay attention and understand how the build is working, because if you get it down right, I don't think you're going to take this bad boy off the rest of the season. I mean, I plan to even run triple Titans with this build in the new dungeon. That's how good I think it is. The class ability for the Titan got another buff this season. It got increased damage resistance versus combatant splash damage attacks when standing behind the barricade from 60% to 80%. This was made specifically for bosses and champions, so you could stand safely behind that barricade. Also, the taunt strength and range no longer fall off over time. That means when you pop that barricade and all the enemies just start shooting at it, it doesn't fall off anymore. So as long as you have a barricade in front of you, enemies will always be aiming at that barricade and not you. And of course, if anything is using splash damage, you're safe because you have 80% resistance from it. And that's before we add any of our own other resistances to the build. So we obviously want to take Rally Barricade. That way we can shoot over it at enemies. We get all the bonus stats as well from the Rally Barricade, like 10% increased damage fall off distance, 50% flinch resistance, 30 stability, and an extra 100 reload speed. And a barricade lasts 20 seconds. It has 500 HP, has 90% damage resistance against non-boss PvP combatants, and we're actually going to add more hit points, more HP to that barricade. The super I would take is Thunder Crash. You see us use this in the gameplay a lot. It does great damage, it's a one-off super, and allows you to get right back to doing all your other damage with your weapons. I like to take Thunderclap with the build. If anything pushes too close to you, you can either tap it or charge it up, let it off, and it will most likely kill whatever's around you. For your grenade of choice, take Pulse Grenade. The reason we take Pulse Grenade is we do take the aspect Touch of Thunder. What this does for our Pulse Grenade is creates ionic traces periodically as it damages targets, and it increases in damage over time for the Pulse Grenade. So with this combo alone, we get a lot of extra damage out of our grenade. We get 5 to 6 ionic traces coming back to us from one single grenade. That alone can give us a barricade ability back. So your combo right off the bat should be to pop your barricade and throw your grenade out. That way, as you continue into using your weapon, you'll have the damage going off from the pulse grenade and the ionic traces coming back to you to feed your barricade right back. For the next aspect, we're taking the new Storm's Keep. When we cast our class ability, we get 4 to 5 stacks of bolt charge right off the bat, and we give it to nearby allies. And then while you're behind that barricade, you and allies gain stacks of bolt charge over time, and your weapons can discharge max stacks of bolt charge. This is really nice because now we just have free stacks of bolt charge over time, and our weapons can use that bolt charge for us. Doesn't have to be an ability, which is really nice. When bolt charge goes off and calls down that thunder, it's strong, like really strong. It doesn't have a crazy AoE, but if enemies are close enough, it will take out entire groups. And we're going to make sure we take one artifact mod that basically doubles the damage of your bolt charge lightning strikes. Now another thing about Storm's Keep is if you have multiple titans using this, it stacks. So when me and my buddy both cast our barricade right away, we instantly go to 10 stacks within like a second. And if you have 2 barricades on top of you, it just builds your stacks that much quicker. I don't even know if I could imagine this with 3 to 6 people running it. That just seems crazy to me. But we're going to beef all of this up even more. For our first fragment, we'll take Spark of Frequency. This says while amplified, the effects are increased and you gain increased stacks of bolt charge from all sources. So anywhere we're getting bolt charges, those stacks are just going to increase, which means we're just going to hit max bolt charge that much quicker. And that's the whole goal of this build, is to hit 10 stacks and discharge that lightning bolt as fast as we possibly can. So to pair with Spark of Frequency, we'll take Spark of Discharge. First off, Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create Ionic Trace. We do take 2 Arc Weapons with the build to play into those Ionic Traces for us. So now our weapons can create Ionic Traces, and that Pulse Grenade we throw out is creating Ionic Traces. And the second part of Spark of Discharge here is collecting Ionic Trace grants you a stack of Bolt Charge. So our Barricade is giving us Bolt Charge very quickly when we stand behind it. Ionic Traces are giving us Bolt Charge when we pick them up, as we're just standing behind our Barricade and shooting things and throwing out that Pulse Grenade. And then Spark of Frequency is increasing the stacks of Bolt Charge from the Stormkeep's Barricade and the Ionic Traces that are coming back to us. For our third fragment, we'll take Spark of Beacons. While you are amplified, your Arc Special or Heavy Ammo Weapon Final Blows creates a blinding explosion. This just adds some crowd control to the build when we're dealing with groups of enemies. We become amplified thanks to the artifact perk Flashover when we hit 10 stacks of Bolt Charge. Next, we'll take Spark of Resistance. This is a 25% damage resistance when we have 3 or more enemies within 15 meters of us. Now for an exotic weapon, I was using Thunderlord. Thunderlord got a nice buff this season that every time it calls down a lightning as its intrinsic trait, you gain a stack of Bolt Charge. So now we have another source of Bolt Charge from this single weapon, and of course Spark of Frequency should be working with that, where it increases the stacks of Bolt Charge that you're gaining from it. But you technically don't even need Thunderlord here. As you can see from the gameplay, even the build turns an auto rifle into something that kills Carl in 6 seconds. That's a primary auto rifle doing that. And I think I showed a short clip right before of how that same auto rifle does like no damage to Carl, right, when it's just on its own. But you could slot a different heavy machine gun in here, and then you could take something like the Lodestar, right, the exotic from this season's pass, and even be applying Jolt with its big beam and adding that into the build. There's so many options you could do here. And that leads me right into your exotic armor piece of choice. And again, there are a lot of options you could use here. But for what I'm trying to do is make sure I have a Barricade available all the time and get my Pulse Grenade back as quickly as possible so it can be spawning Ionic Traces for me. It's just a little loop between those two abilities, and there's nothing better than Heart of Immos Light on the Titan. You could also play with Actium War Rig if you never want to reload your weapons. You could even do Hazardous Propulsion, where every time you drop that Barricade, you're going to shoot out your swarm of rockets on an enemy, right? You have a ton of options here, but the way I've built this build and how you should be playing it is behind that Barricade, and that's what Heart of Immos Light does the best. When you use an ability, it empowers the other two abilities. The abilities have faster regen, melees and grenades do more damage, and Barricades have more hit point. You get the buff for 5 seconds. The grenade either does 20% or 35% more damage, depending if you have empowered ×1 or 2. And you also get 400% regen to the grenade or 800% regen to the grenade. But the big thing here is Barricades have more hit points. I'm not sure on the exact number on that, but if it means my Barricade can last longer and bosses can't destroy it as easily, then that's exactly what I want to do with this build. I want that Barricade to be up and be useful to me. Now for the mods on the build, we're going to create Orbs of Power, keep ammo in our weapons, and buff our weapon damage. So on the helmet, we'll just take Harmonic Siphon to create Orbs of Power with those arc weapons. We'll take a heavy ammo finder and a special ammo finder, because I want to keep ammo in both of my weapons. On the gauntlets, we'll take an arc loader. When you're sitting behind that Barricade and you combine that with an arc loader, you're going to be reloading so fast, which is why I went away from Actium War Rig. Then we'll also take Bolstering Detonation, so we get class ability energy when we cause damage with that Pulse Grenade, and a Firepower mod to make that Pulse Grenade create Orbs of Power for us. On the chest piece, I do like to take 1 Harmonic Reserves, just to get extra arc ammo in both those weapons for us, and then 2 resistances to fill out the chest. On the boots, we'll take 2 arc weapon surges. This will give us 17% damage bonus to both our weapons, and you can see how that would just beef up things even more. Then we'll also take a recuperation to replenish health each time we pick up an Orb of Power. Then on the class item, we'll take Time Dilation to make each Orb of Power last 15 seconds. For our arc weapon surges, we'll take a Reaper, so after we pop that class ability, our weapon will spawn an Orb of Power, and a Bomber mod, just so we get 12% of our grenade coming back every time we use that Barricade. For stats on that build, aim for 100 Resilience, then push your Discipline up, and you're good to go. But your Barricade cooldown is tied to your Resilience stat, so aim for 100 Resilience no matter what. Now for artifact mods on the build, you definitely want to take Flashover. When you gain maximum bolt charge, you also become amplified, and lightning bolts deal more damage. So now when we're just standing behind that barricade, we'll hit our max bolt charge, right? That'll make us amplified, so now it's harder for enemies to hit us. And then the lightning bolts we're calling down just deals that much more damage. And we get 15% DR. Since I am using Thunderlord, take Overload machine guns, and pair that with Disruptor Spike. Improves the effects of Exhaust and Sever, lowering a target's damage output even further, and Overload machine guns this season will exhaust enemies. I also liked pairing this build with Unraveling Orbs. Picking up an Orb of Power grants you unraveling rounds to a strand weapon, and then Horde Shuttle. Damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a Threadling. This is a 14-second buff where you get unraveling rounds when you pick up an Orb of Power, so it lasts a long time. That means all you need to do is put one bullet into an enemy with your strand weapon to apply the unravel debuff, and then all that outgoing damage you're doing when you even swap to Thunderlord would still be triggering the unravel, and that would spread to all the other enemies, and you'll be popping out Threadlings from the enemy you're shooting that is unraveled thanks to Horde Shuttle. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. This was a longer one today. Hopefully you made it here to the end. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.